Okay, so I was given the topic, the 2520, and to be honest, I wish I had listened much more better back in the past so that I would have had a better understanding of these things. But it's a lot of history, and so I had to go through all of it, and I pray that I will be able to present it very well. Okay. So I won't go too much in depth because I know that we all know about the 2520, seeing that it's a it's an integral part of our movement. We have studied it a lot. So I will probably just go through the basics. All right, so when we look at the 2520, we know that this prophecy has derived from the study of Leviticus 26, 18 and onwards. And so we see the pioneers, but especially Miller and Edson, they showed, okay, probably I should write that. Can you see that?
Could you repeat?
Could you see what I wrote on the board?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so the 2520 I was saying, they looked at Leviticus 26:18 and onwards, and so this is not such a scary number. It's simply just 7 times 360, saying that there's 260 years, days in a year, and because it was mentioned 7 times, so they times 7 times 360, and that's where we get the 2520 days, and using the idea of a year, a day equal a year, the principle, then that's how they got 2520 years. So this 2520 was studied a lot between 2001 between 2001 and 2014. So like I said, it has become a foundational part of our message. But in 1863, it was such a controversial topic. And so what was the controversy? While some were reading Leviticus 26, they saw the events as simply just a punishment being intensified. Others, as they read Leviticus, they saw that to every time 7 times was mentioned, that it showed a duration. And once you look at duration, then that means it begins at one point and ends at another point, and then it becomes a time prophecy. So that was the controversy. Some were saying it's a time prophecy, and some were saying no, this has nothing to do with prophecy. It's just simply showing an intensifying of the punishment. All right. So let me just quickly write this here. So this is the controversy. We're seeing some that believe intensity. Okay, so they were saying it's just showing an intensity. Oh boy, these markers are not well. So we will see God mentioning about the punishment, and every time he mentions it, it gets more severe. All right? 7 times. Okay? And another group were saying, we don't see simply just intensity, but we see a duration. We see God's people going into God's people being destroyed here, or they're being punished for 20 years. And at the end of this period, then we see a restoration. Okay, so God's people being restored here at the end. Okay. I hope this is showing clearly on the board. I'm not seeing too well. Can you see that, you see that, Savant?
Yes, we see.
Okay, I will try to get some better markers right now. Okay, so that was the controversy. Some saying the intensity that we see, just the punishment, getting more severe, and others were saying no. At 7 times that is mentioned, it's a time prophecy, and we see the 25-20 years. Okay.
Mm.
All right. Let me just quickly erase this. Okay, if anybody has any input, feel free to share your point. Okay, and so now here we see, where am I? Let's take a quick look at what Miller taught. All right. Here we see 7 times. As I said, some were teaching intensity, and others were looking at duration. All right. And Miller, he was one of them who taught duration. He looked at the prophecy, at the verses, and he said, oh, 7 times? This is 7, this is a prophetic timing. It has a beginning point and an ending point, all right? And so through a methodical study, Miller found a starting date for the 25-20, which he placed at 677 BC. And that was when King Manasseh was taken captive All right. So
I can hear you now. Your internet is cutting. Hello, Sister Rose. Are you there?
Frozen. Puedes hacer pausa en grabar y después continuar.
Ok, ¿dónde pone? ¿Dónde está esto? Ok, ok.
okay, so he started when he saw the 2520 as duration. He had a starting point, and so he looked at 677 BC when Manasseh, the king of the southern kingdom, he was taken captive, and so adding that 20 years for the punishment, it led him to 1843, and so that's how he came up with that date. And there's so many more evidences that he used, but we're not going to go into it. Let me see. And when I was looking at all the evidences, it sounded all pure and convincing, you know. There was also Edson. He looked at Leviticus 26, and he also saw that it was a time prophecy. Okay. But his thing was, he was saying that Miller started this prophecy at a wrong date. And he says, no, I have the right date. Miller was wrong, but I'm right. So yes, he sees the 2520 literal years, but his ended in 1798. And that's simply because it started. Let me see if I could show that on the minute here. So Edson, he started it at 723 BC. And so that brought him to 1798. All right, 20 years. Okay. And so this 723 was when Hoshea, I think, he was taken captive. Now he says that 1798 is just a second Exodus. All right, so we see when God delivered his people from Egypt, he was saying 1798 simply shows God taking his children out of bondage, out of that 60 years of wilderness experience, and God giving them freedom in 1798. All right. And later on, when they were reviewing, after the disappointment, when they gathered together and they started to review the charts and all the occurrences, Edson said that the mistake was not 1843, he said, but 677. All right. That's what Edson said. And later on, we will see if he was right or not. All right. Then we also have James White, he definitely had his belief on the 25-20 as well. But he said, you know what? Miller and Edson, they are just fighting over nothing. He said they're fighting over prophecy that they have made up. He says because when you read Leviticus 26, he says it's not even talking about a prophecy, but it's simply just showing or another word, a punishment that has been intensified. All right. So here we have none of the markers are working out. So we have James with his own belief that it's just an intensity of the punishment. And when you read Leviticus 26, indeed, you would see the first punishment is not severe as the second, and the second is not as severe as the third. So we do see that the punishment gets more intensity as you go throughout the verses. So even James White's argument seemed quite logical and pure. And he also said that if you would go to the Hebrew, he said the word times mentioned there, it's not even a noun. He said it's an adverb. It's just describing the severity of the verb. All right. So he said Miller and Edson, they are just creating a prophecy that really does not exist. Okay. Anybody have any input?
No, it is clear until now.
Okay, so let's look at one more pioneer. And who do you think it would be? Who wants to give it a guess? Uriah. Okay, Uriah Smith. I think it was in 19. I don't remember exactly, but he wrote about the 25-20 as well. He also believes, after deep studying, that the word in the Hebrew simply, it was an adverb, and it's just like saying your punishment would be sevenfold, all right? Severity. He also said this seems very illogical. He says if you're saying that times when it mentioned, if you would see 25-20, he says in Leviticus 26, he says then there are 4 punishments that was mentioned. He says, so then you're going to see 4 25-20, which adds up to 10,080 years. And he says this doesn't make sense, because how would that so much years be a punishment on a nation? All right. So he didn't see it making any logic that that Leviticus 26 was speaking about a time prophecy. All right. Okay, so there we have it. 25-20. Some were saying it speaks about intensity, James and Uriah, and the 25-20 shows duration. So Miller was saying it's a time prophecy. Edson was saying the same, just that they had different beginning dates. And then one ended in 1798 and the other ended in 1843. Okay. The other point we want to look at is the movement, early understanding of the 2520. So we're going to look at what Jeff understood. Was there anybody wants to add anything?
Yeah, I think you asked when Miller did discover the 2520, and was this your question?
It was Uriah. Uriah Smith.
What about Uriah Smith?
When he wrote about the 2520.
Uriah Smith.
Yeah, I think they wrote about it.
1843. 1843.
So we don't very know so well when Uriah Smith wrote about it, because he was there is a note in a book in Daniel Revelation at the end that appears pretty late, that I don't really know, not so sure when he, and if it's even him that wrote about it. It seems like the editors put it in the book. So I don't know why you say Uriah Smith.
Okay.
You don't mean Hiram Edson?
No, it was Uriah Smith.
Yeah. So in his major work that he did, yes, in Daniel Revelation, there was a controversy that he wrote against the 2520, and I looked for it, and I looked it up in the library in White State, and I don't remember exactly what year, but it comes pretty late. It comes after his I think it's after his death that it appears in the book. So it didn't seem to me that he wrote about it actually.
Okay.
And I'm not, I think that in his other book on the chart, I think he doesn't address it, but I may not remember correctly.
Okay. I could double check it.
Yeah, maybe I just don't remember.
Okay, so let's look at so Jeff started studying Daniel 11, and he came across the time of the end. So the study began with Daniel 11, and it led him to time of the end. Okay, so while studying that, the time of the end, they also saw the gathering and the scattering time, and it was the three tests that comes along with that. So they look at, so this study led them to the okay, so the scattering and the gathering, and also the three tests. And then that's when they formulated, sorry, arrow here. They formulated the reform line chart. I have a bag of markers here, and I'm trying to find the best one. Okay, so they came up with the.
Sorry, Sister Rose. This is the time of the gathering that you are considering?
I didn't hear you.
See, you are presenting the scattering now.
I'm saying that that's a part of the topics that Jeff they were studying.
Okay.
And so this led them to come across the 2520. Okay, so he started to study Daniel 11. He came up to the term time of the end. And while studying that also led them to the scattering and the gathering, to that term, all right? So they were trying to understand what these things meant. And then finally they came up with the reform chart. All right? You understood what I said? Okay, so because one of the visual tests was the chart, they took time out to study what this chart was all about. And while studying, they had to inquire on the 2520. We're used to the 2,300 days, but when they started 2520, they decided we want to study what this is about. Okay, and so through studying Miller's work, they started 2520, and we're so happy to see that they have a second witness to 1844. So not only, we didn't only have to use the 2300 days to come up to 1844, but he also saw that the 2520 also was a second witness to 1844. So that's briefly what Jeff looked at. They also went over Edson's work. And then finally in 2009, I think it was between 2005 to 2009, there was an increase of knowledge on the issue of the 2520. And so now that's when Parminder comes to view with his point, okay? What a nice way to study. Anyway, so I was saying now this is what we have here. (1798). So we have Miller with his point of view. We also have Edson. Sorry, I should have all of these together, but I just put it here like this. We have James, and then right here in 1989, there comes Carmen Danao, and that was about 2005 to 2009. He studied the issue and he came up with the understanding that Leviticus 26 is speaking about both duration and intensity. So he's saying both both Miller and Edson was right. And later on we will see why. Okay. He also came up with a study called 2520 Revealed. Okay, so there in that study he addressed 2520, and he showed why he stands by it simply because it was approved by God. So when we look at between the years 1844 to 1846, but these were 2 years right after the disappointment, the pioneers gathered together to reassess all that happened and also to review the charts. And during that time, Ellen White approved the chart. So the chart had the stamp of her approval and God's approval. And so from that point, they stood fast to the 2520. Later on, we will see that in 1863, they came up with a new chart, and that's when they took off the 2520. And as I've studied, it seemed as though that was the same time more or less when God punished them and Adventism was scattered. All right. Now, many Adventists teach that the mistake that caused the disappointment was the 2520. But that's not true. It was just a failure of giving account of the zero year that caused that mistake. However, on the 1850 chart, that mistake was fixed. So you won't see 1843, but you will see 1844 on the 1850 chart. All right. Anybody have anything to say?
You're speaking about the 1850 chart or about the 1863 chart?
I said on the 1850 chart, they made the correction. So you won't see 1843, but you will see 1844. But later on in 1863, a new chart was made, and they completely rejected the 2520. All right.
Yes, it basically didn't have many numbers there any longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, correct.
Okay. Parmenda also showed that the 2520 teaches the importance of events, and that's one main reason why he sees it very important, because it teaches us the importance of events. All right. So now after 1844, the great disappointment, Adventism awaits the Sunday-Law. We all speak of the Sunday-Law. But during that long period from 1844 up to now, what do we expect? Do we just sit there and wait for the Sunday-Law? Or would God be wise enough to show us events that would lead to the Sunday-Law so that we will be prepared? And so with the study of the 2520, Elder Parmenda shows us various events that would lead up to the Sunday-Law. I just want to quickly write that in. Okay, we have 1798, and then we see 1844. And after the great disappointment, we're all looking for the Sunderland. We know the close of probation, and then Christ is coming. Second Advent. Now, what happened after this history? Question mark. What happened through that history? We don't reading, I would say simply just reading the Bible or reading spiritual prophecy. How would we come up with events? Because like I said, God won't just leave us right there waiting. He's going to give us events that would lead up to this great event of the Sunday. All right, and so through the study of the 2520, and I hope I'm going to explain this very well. We see, how would I put it? We see the 126 years, which is a symbol of the 2520. So now we're not looking at 2520 literal years, but we're looking at it in a symbolic manner, where there's a scattering and then God's people are being gathered at some point. So we're taking out the principle of the 2520 rather than looking at it as a literal 2520 years and coming up with an end point. No, that's not what we're looking at. We want to look at it symbolically, where at some point God's people were scattered and then there's a restoration. All right, so looking at the 126 years, which is from, I think that's from 163. Sorry, from 1863. And if we would take that 126 years, it would lead us to 1989. So here we see 126. And what happens here? Adventism in 1863, Adventism was scattered. And then in 1989, God started to gather again his people. Am I right on that?
Yes.
Okay. While studying the 2520, he also saw the 161 years. Okay, and that was from 1863. Here we see 2014, which was the from the law for the priest, all right? Between 1989 and 2014, we know another waymark. We have 2001. Yeah, a lot of rain. And also we have here 2019, which is total probation for the priest. All right, so by studying the 2520, he came up with these dates. Like I said, as he looked at the symbolism of the 126 and the 161, 51. All right. He also mentioned that if we don't understand the events or even the nature of the events that we are to expect, then we could fall into a trap. We could either be looking for something that we think would happen that had already taken place, or because we're looking for it to occur in our own preconceived nature or with our own mentality, then we might miss the event when it does occur because we're looking for something that we have created. And we saw that with the Jews, because they were expecting Christ to, the Messiah, to come as some great earthly king. When Jesus did came, they missed it. They even missed the messages from John the Baptist that would be preparing them for Christ, for them to accept Christ. They all missed that because they had their own preconceived ideas of what they were expecting. So it's important to know the events, to know the nature in which the events will come, so that when, before it comes, we will be prepared not to miss it. All right. Parminda also mentioned that it's important to understand the external as well as the internal events. But as we look at 1989, 2001, 2014, we saw all external events, but they also had their internal representation for God's people. But how would we go about studying external events when there are so many news sources that are telling us of things that are happening in the outside world? You know, because remember now, if we're waiting for the wrong event, or like I said, we have our own preconceived ideas, then how will we be prepared? So when we look at the yeah, so as we look at the external news, remember now, a correct understanding of the external news would affect us. It would either bring life or death. Okay, and when we look at life, then we will be seeing the right news sources that would be giving us relevant news, or we would be caught up with conspiracy theories, which definitely will lead to death, whether literal, literal death, but also we will look at dying spiritually, because we actually will be sealed in our minds, in our hearts. So whatever news sources we're feeding our minds with, if they're not bringing life, they definitely will bring death, and we will be sealed, not with God's seal, but with life, if we're not rightly looking at the right external events. Okay. Now, Parminder also showed that both methods of intensity and duration have some similar features. And he says that they just perfectly come together. That was the new light that he had. And he said Edson completely dismissed Miller's view. And because of that, he only had half of the story. But he said if they would have brought both stories together, they would have seen the perfect picture of the 2520 as intensity and duration. He went on to connect the 2520 as one. And at this time, I'm going to ask Marco if you could kindly explain that to us, because I didn't understand it too well. Okay.
Okay. Give me a minute and I will connect my screen. It's a little bit as the icing of the cake that you're leaving to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a very good series also done by Catherine Dibrivnaya of Australia, and she does a good job. But it's, of course, it's many parts. I think she's done 10 parts and hasn't finished yet. So a recommendation. Okay, I'm almost ready. So the logic of the 2520 being one is a very crucial issue that was introduced by Parminder. Yeah, this is something that the movement is having, and it's a development of the previous understanding. Of course, as you have seen already, we have two 2520s. In our understanding, this is nothing new, if you have heard in this presentation. It's all old Millerite logic. So we have Hiram Edson's view, and then we have Miller's view, which of course is the other line that goes to 1844. So the only thing that we did and the movement did when it rediscovered these time prophecies, was that we said both are correct, yes, but still we understood them as two time prophecies. One talking about Israel, the other talking about Judah. Now, Parminder, in 2009, he did a series, an important series in 2520, where he went a step further and he said both are one. It's not correct to say that there are two time prophecies. We should rather see them as one time prophecy, okay, which has some waymarks here in between, but nevertheless, it's still one-time prophecy. And this is, there are many points. I'll just give a resume why we would say this. There are some very logic ones. If you would start a punishment, or as we would say, a scattering on Israel, with whom does the scattering, this punishment end? It's a question for you. What people do be at the end of the scattering? What do you say? So when Israel is punished, is there someone else who needs to be punished, or it's just Israel? Brother Martinez?
I would say the end declare the beginning, and the beginning declare the end. So if it started off with Israel, it should end with Israel.
Yes, correct. This is logic, right? And Jesus says so. We are not punished because of what our parents did. Yes, we bear consequences, but the punishment is not on us. So the sin of our fathers have consequences for us, but we are not punished. So the scattering here, which started with Israel or for Israel, where is Israel in 1798? Right? There is no Israel any longer. So we have this time period here, 733 BC, when Israel was scattered by Assyria. And you remember, they were literally scattered. They were taken to Assyria, taken out of Israel, of the northern part of the kingdom. And they were put in so many different places that they lost their social, their cultural connection. And it was a strategy to destroy this nation. The Assyrians did very well, but you can also see it from a different perspective. That they integrated Israelites into their kingdom. They became part of their culture. There was no rebellion possible. There was no possibility to gather and to start a movement and to come back. Yes? So this is also known as the 10 lost tribes. So if the 10 lost tribes, yes, let's say they are lost about here, they are not anymore. They have no connection. They don't know where their family lives. They don't know where their friends are. They have no idea. So why would the scattering go on for 2,000 more years, 2,500 more years, or whatever? No, it doesn't make sense. There's no scattering on these people that ends here. It's a totally different time. It's different people. It's not even Israel any longer, literal Israel. So this is one issue. Why it doesn't make sense to think of the scattering that long. Yes, because the scattering is accomplished very quickly after the deportation. This is one thing. Scattering issue. Then there's another thing, and this is a very interesting, or perhaps the main part of the argument, that Jesus connects both 2520 into one. Does anyone remember, where does Jesus talk about these timelines? Where does he connect those to 2520?
Was Matthew 24. He
Yes.
connected the history of I remember,
Yes, that's correct.
from 31 to 70 AD.
Yeah, in the discourse, I think you write it different. No? That's how you write it. You have it in Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13. It's when the disciples ask Jesus, what will the end like be? What are the signs of the end? When will the Lord come? Right? You remember these series of questions they make to Jesus? And Jesus gives them an answer. And how does Jesus answer? How does his answer look like? What is the structure of his answer? Anyone remembers? And this is, I think, this is all good old Adventism understanding.
He didn't separate the destruction of Jerusalem and his coming. He just gave one long explanation. I guess he didn't want to stress the mind of his disciples. So when he explained it, it looked like one thing he was talking about, one story.
Correct. Jesus combines different stories or different histories. What histories exactly does he combine?
We see him combining the destruction of Jerusalem.
Okay.
The Dark Ages, and also the Millerite history.
Correct. Destruction of Jerusalem. Let me just put here the dates. So 70 AD, then the 1260 years, and the story of 1798, 1844. Yes? So in his answer, these stories become one story. Yeah, and he combines literal with spiritual Israel. He makes them just one story. Disciples don't understand, right? And I think Adventism didn't quite understand either, because we think that he's speaking about us. Yeah, but he's not. He's speaking about 70 AD, 1260, and the Millerite history. That's all. He does not go beyond these times. But what he does, and here we would need to invest more time. But what he does, and you can easily see, is that he is talking about the 2520, because 1798 and 1844, these are the 2520 time period marks. But he also talks about the end, right? So he also talks about 70 AD, and he talks about 1798. This is the end of the 1260, which is part or half of the 2520. So he's talking about these histories, but when he's talking about these histories, he makes them one history. And I think this is the most important argument that we understand. And this is why we come to understand that this is just one big history. It's just one big history. Because of the endpoints, so to speak, are part of one history, the beginning must also be part of just one history. And then you could go through all the different times that Jesus actually touches when he speaks about these 10 prophecies. He speaks about many different periods, because he speaks about basically, oh, I made a mistake here. He speaks about 538, right? Well, anyway, somewhere here we have 70 AD. So Jesus is really touching, or he's referring very specifically to all of these stories. And you can show this verse by verse, how he goes through one event, and you can place this event in 70 AD. This is what we mostly know, right? When the troops of Rome or the abomination of desolation stands on holy ground. And then we remember that he speaks about Dark Ages very briefly. He speaks about 1798, all of this. I think this is enough for now. And this is basically the logic or the main argument why we would combine these two 2021. Any questions to this part? If no, I hand back over to Rose. You're still muted. Rose, you're muted.
Okay, I was asking if anybody has any questions. No question? Okay, well, I think if, time has expired already. But before we close, I ask again, any questions or any comments at all? Okay, so it's a very interesting topic, and I guess it's good for all of us to study more deeper this topic. The main fact that the 2520 teaches restoration, and in our time we're seeing a lot of restorations taking place. I'm saying that it's a topic that we all need to look at more deeply. All right. Okay, so if there's no question or any comments, then I guess we could pray. Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, could I have a volunteer to close us off in prayer?
Father, we continue to let us pray. Father, we continue to thank you for these meetings, oh Lord. We continue to thank you for the truths that you have shown us in a time of confusion, oh Father, where the world is running to. Lord, people are not too sure about what is taking place, but we thank you that you have revealed these things to us, that we have a peace of heart and a peace of mind. I ask that you may continue to bless us. May you forgive us of our sins, oh Father, that our prayers to you daily may be answered. We continue to ask that you may continue to bless this movement, oh Father. May you continue to bless the leaders, and may you continue to bless each and every member. May you bless us. May you give us a good night rest. And Father, may you allow us to wake up to do your will. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, thank
Amen.
you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Comment.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.
Good night. Thank you, Rose. Thank you. You did a good job.
Thank you,
It's a
Rose.
very,
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
yeah, it's a big topic. There's so much to say, and I think you put it very well into this tiny space of time. It's a good overview. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good night.
Good night.